Hello and welcome to this week's brand new podcast episode on the Holistic Business and Life Mastery Show. I'm your show host, Supriya Roy, and I'm here to guide you to align your business with your life's purpose, to help you create a business that is giving you back your calm and actually generating profits. So today's episode is going to help you learn the 3 success habits of solopreneurs, and hopefully you can take note and course correct if in case these habits are already not part of your own personal practice. Now, why do we need habits? Habits are, as they say, as you sow, so shall you reap, right? Habits are the cornerstones of the results that we're creating in life, business, and relationships, health. Wherever we are, we've got results, and they're usually the fruits of our actions. And habits are actions taken regularly, and everything is a result of that momentum. So I really am passionate about habits that are powerful and empowering and easy to maintain. How about you? I don't think anyone likes to develop habits that are hard to maintain, that you can forget, and that don't actually give you results, right? So in my episode, I want to really highlight to you how these habits, or we're going to just go through 3, how these habits actually show up as bad habits. What's the thinking that's going on behind that? And how to actually avoid the consequences they create so that you can actually make a more informed, better habit out of whatever is showing up for you. Does that sound good? Now, I'm not just going to pull things out of thin air. This is information that I'm actually drawing from my client work that I do, the transformation that I've experienced in my life and my business. And I'm going to share with you things that you probably are already aware of, but if you're not doing them, if you're not actually practicing some of these things, that your brain might say, Supriya, tell me something I don't know. Well, my friend, that's exactly it. If you're not actioning what you don't know, take it as a sign that you were meant to hear this today, and it's your cue from your unconscious, the universe, superconscious mind, telling you it's time you change the routine. You change things because it's in your consciousness. So one of the things that I want to give you as an overarching thought for today's episode is, as you're listening, I want you to be mindful that you're here listening to gain insights and tips and the way to think for yourself so that you are making better choices to develop and grow your holistic practice and also yourself. Habits, your personal habits, your thinking, your emotions, and your experiences are no different to the ones that you're having while you're inside your business. And that's why we call this the Business and Life Mastery Show. And it's really important that you remember that as you're listening to today's episode, because whatever's happening behind the scenes is actually also happening on screen. And some of us are aware of it and some of us aren't. And so the overarching idea also I want you to note is that much of the habits that we don't want for ourselves, neuroscience and human behavioral sciences, they've explored human nature, the way our psychology works, and they know and they found out that the brain is wired toward negative thinking, and it is through better habits of thinking, mindset, then better habits of doing things, right, will then help us pull ourselves out from wherever we are naturally wired to go to make it a positive place for ourselves, right? So the mind is geared towards negativity. So with bad habits come the emotions of fear, guilt, shame, and sadness. And why you must know that these are the things is because we need to be aware of how having a bad habit in our life is not just a matter of changing the habit, but we're also looking for better feeling emotions that actually helps us win at life. Okay? So guilt, shame, sadness, and fear, they get triggered. They are emotions that come up more and more when we have bad habits as well. So we will talk about these kinds of things at another time, though this is another thing I want you to know why it's so important to have a good understanding of what bad habits keep us in these guilt, shame, sadness, fear loops, which only creates that sort of level of results. And that's why it's so important for us to learn what are the successful people doing who, just like us, just like you and me, we all have the same neurology where the brain has the tendency and the wiring to go towards lower vibrational thoughts, negative thinking, and at the same time, people that have overcome that is through developing good and better performing habits. Cool? So, habit number one that I want to talk about is not a good one. It's one where someone constantly takes statistics, metrics, numbers, responses from others, anything that's happening in their circumstances to make it mean something about them. And when I say make it mean something about them, I'm talking about the negative meanings, such as it's often when you start out in business or running your own holistic practice, if you get successful, hey, that's good news. But I've said this many times on this show, it's not always success, right? We are constantly testing, experimenting, and we're finding out new things. And these results are metrics that we're also tracking. And straight away, the thinking that takes place, and this is coming from my conversations with many clients, is you tell yourself that it's all your fault. Oh, that client didn't buy. Oh, that didn't work so well on social media. Oh, that didn't work so well today. And it's something inside you that says it's got something to do with you. It's your fault, and that it means something about you. Like maybe it's your fault that didn't work. Another example that I can think of is I'm actually a trainer as well, where I do face-to-face training during my weeks. And if you and I work together, the situation would be that you would tell me about what you have tested, tried, etc. And my role as your trainer, mentor, is to give you feedback. Okay? So, as a mentor and trainer, my psychology, and this is very different to a coach, my psychology is that you listen to my feedback and you go and implement it. It's not to give you any feedback about you personally. Because as a trainer and a mentor, we're really working to getting better at technique, better practice, raising the standard of practice. It's just getting you to be a better practitioner. Getting this? So how can you get to be the best version of you with a practice if you don't keep practicing and if you don't get feedback? So what I keep noticing in someone that is my mentee and a student is they have this ongoing narrative, and this is happening automatically within them, is that anytime they get feedback, they're making meaning of it about themselves. Oh, I forgot again. And oh, I will remember that. Of course, I know that. I just didn't do it this time. So as they receive my feedback, they're constantly talking back to it instead of just listening. Okay, just taking it on board. Like, okay, it's not a test, right? So think about your situations. Do you do this in any situation in your life? And what I want you to do here in this private space between you and I is be honest with yourself, because if you're honest with yourself, if you're doing this in any space, it could be in your relationships, it could be in your professional relationships, it could be also in your vocational space, and if it's happening in any area, basically it's happening in your business as well. Whether it's happening consciously or unconsciously, it's happening. So wherever you can spot it, celebrate it. Okay, so I want you to celebrate it if you can spot this happening in your life where you're making statistics mean something about you. I'm going to give you one more example, which is I'm guilty of doing this myself, and I know that even my mentors do this too. We're constantly working on this one. And that is, you look at your bank account, what do? You unconsciously, your mind will make a meaning about it, about you. Okay, and then that's your signal that if it's happening there, then it's probably happening elsewhere too. So what does this create, do you think? What does it actually create, this way of behaving and thinking? Okay, it's not your fault, though it is happening consciously or unconsciously. So once you've spotted it, it's no longer unconscious, and when it's in your conscious awareness, you can shift it. But let's talk about what this creates within the business sphere. When you are receiving feedback from your client and you're constantly talking back to it and explaining yourself, really getting defensive, well, they'll probably hear you out the first time, though if that's the way you handle feedback and you constantly have some sort of thing to say back and you explain yourself, then there will be a time when everyone will stop giving you that feedback. So holistic professionals that are successful, they adopted a better mindset about what they notice outside of themselves. So be it your bank account balance, be it your environment giving you feedback, be it your clients giving you feedback or your mentors giving you feedback, or your results, whatever you did and you got some outcomes and that is not to your liking. You know, what's a better way is, instead of saying that it's all your fault, you need to do better and that you have so much to do with this, I want you to take a detached approach and use this statement instead. And that is, what is this dash, whatever that is, experience, statistics, consequence, circumstance, this conversation, what is this experience teaching me about myself? And the conversation that you end up having from there with yourself is very different to asking yourself, why did this happen to me? Or why can't I do better? Why can't I figure this out? Why didn't I remember this or that? Okay. So instead of talking about things that it's your fault, you must say, what are you learning about yourself through this experience? This is the attitude that we take in running a business, because running a business is a long-term activity. It will always take you down the road of personal development, and the road gets easier on doing work like this on yourself as quickly as you accept that you are a lifelong learner. So no matter what the outcome is, you take the approach of being a lifelong learner, being curious, and just like that, anything that you have in front of you, whether you enjoy it or you don't, most of the times we respond to pain and discomfort more quickly. So we can ask ourselves, what is this experience teaching me about myself? And just sit with that and then journal on that and discover what is it that it's telling you about what you believe about yourself, what you're thinking about yourself, and what needs to change about yourself. Or perhaps what's amazing about yourself too. Getting this? So, it's not an overnight process. And here at SR Coaching and Consulting, we do offer mindset programs like the Empowered You program. And inside that program, we actually work through your deeper beliefs by utilizing life problems, life outcomes, and looking deeper into them to help you build an awareness, some practical solutions to be able to change and shift through certain repetitive beliefs, repetitive outcomes, and repetitive inner chatting that keeps you stuck with the same old, same old. Okay, so the habit that I want you to change today is, instead of making the external mean anything about you, instead of that, ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me about myself? Simple. I want you to maybe use a journal instead of just doing it in your head. So that's number one. Let's talk about number two. Habit number two is, and many of us are guilty of having done this and then learnt it the hard way, and then being delighted when this happens to be like our favorite thing now, and that is not planning, not following a plan. So when you're not following a plan, now you know this cerebrally, logically, you know, oh my God, when you don't have a plan, what happens? Not knowing what to do means so many things, meaning it translates into so many things. Not knowing what to do, a lot of people that I work with in the beginning stages, they think that a plan means that everything, meaning the how, has to be worked out right from the beginning. And it's actually not true. So the misunderstanding that goes along with not planning is that we think that we have to have every second of our day planned, and actually every step of the way has to be planned. So that is not what we mean. And having a plan actually means that can have many meanings, but most of all, you need to know why you're doing it and what are you working towards. So why are you doing it and what are you working towards? What value does it bring you? And what are you thinking of creating through this action, through this day, through this conversation? What is your intention? Can you see the questions that we're asking with this topic? But a lot of people go into, but how will I do this? How will I do that? And how is that going to be? Okay? And that's incorrect. And the reason why we do this is because, and hear me out, you can reject the thought if you want to, though I've worked with many people, including myself. Okay, I've been on this long learning process myself. And 99% of the time, it is due to something that happened in our early childhood that, you know, you can call it trauma, or you can also call it just past experiences, early childhood experiences that taught us not to trust a plan, okay, or not to trust ourselves. So we start asking the questions how? How will I ever get there? What if this happens? What if that happens? So the belief is that, no, you can't trust yourself. I can't be trusted. And this is probably not you in your current life, though it's coming from early childhood when you may have been given a task to do, but you failed it miserably, as you do when you're a kid. But maybe someone around you gave it the meaning that, oh, you can't do that. You're not capable of doing it. Or you're just like hopeless. And you kind of lose your self-trust, or you feel diminished by those comments. Or perhaps maybe one day you got lost, and you didn't know the way, and then you felt hopeless. Okay? And I'm just giving you examples of what may have happened that develops the idea that you cannot trust yourself. And this fear of not being able to trust yourself, okay, that loss of trust in yourself may have this, playing out in things like this, may have its roots in you not following a plan now. Because perhaps there's this underlying belief that says, well, it's not going to work anyway, so what's the point? And I'm only speaking this from my personal narrative that I have broken out of, okay? And I have helped many clients do it themselves too. And when I've worked with other people, I have seen that the first initial level of planning is so light, is so minimal, but then it gets them started with this bigger purpose to actually being on a mission daily, and then the mission unfolding on its own. And that's what they mean by the how is just unfolding as you keep taking action. And then when you look at neuroscience, this is how they explain, or they have studied and demonstrated the way to build self-trust is actually being able to do the thing you said you would do. Okay, no matter what, do the thing that you said you would do, and then suddenly a new neurology starts to happen in your brain to go, aha, I do trust myself. So for me, that journey began when I started my yoga journey. Up until then, I was the most unreliable person in my life. I would not follow a plan because I never had a plan of my own. Up until then, in my very early 20s, I was following the scripted plan. Like a robot, like a zombie, as a lot of you and I, we've all gone through this. In fact, I keep meeting more and more people that have woken up that, our futures in our generation, if you're a 80s kid at least, a 70s, 80s kid, 60s even, parents planned your future and then you just did what you were told. But then later on you found that, wait a second, that's not what I wanted for myself. Anyway, we're digressing. Though coming back to self-trust, there is a way forward to build self-trust again. But can you see how this might affect your ability to do things in your business, or your ability to do things for your family or for yourself? I know a lot of you will do everything for your family, but maybe you don't do it for yourself. Though, from what I have learned personally and what I've learned through my clients is the bigger things, bigger shifts and bigger gains will happen in your family's lives, in your clients' lives, when you start to give it to yourself. When you have this unshakable self-trust, that is when unshakable things happen in life. Okay? So people won't mess with you anymore because they know what you say is exactly what's going to happen. And can you imagine if you had that level of personal power when it came to life, business, health, relationships, spirituality. But this is the fundamental of, actually the fundamental idea of having a plan is to be able to follow it, right? A lot of us don't create a plan because we don't trust ourselves to follow the plan. Once again, that mentee that I was referring to in the last habit that I was describing, no matter how many times they even create a plan, they have it on them, but they don't use it. And that's all right. Sometimes changes take time. But my work today is to bring this in your conscious awareness. So when we think about making changes on this level, it's not going to happen overnight. And if it does happen, amazing. Though most people that don't follow a plan, this is coming from a deep-rooted trauma of having lost self-trust. And the deeper this, experience was, and the more experiences that have confirmed this, the more we need to spend time developing self-trust. Once again, we do give you so much mindset work within our Holistic Business Mastery programs. And I also am sharing this with you so that you will reach out to us. You will reach out to someone that you can work with to help you bring more awareness, expose these limiting thoughts that keep you stuck in not trusting yourself. I can give you so many examples from my journey of having been on this entrepreneurial journey, and it's been the most rewarding journey because without this, I wouldn't have learned so much about myself and healed parts of myself that I didn't even know that were not really just wounded, though also not seen, not acknowledged, not understood. So, what is a better plan? Or, no puns intended. I mean, this is a topic of not having a plan, but what is the better thing to do is to create a plan. When you create a plan, you're asking yourself questions like, what do I really want? And yes, your lack of self-trust is the thing that will help you or ask you questions like, how will I get there? Okay. Yes, there are goals that are not right. But what I have been told myself is that you've sometimes got to be delusional. And why the F not? Because plans are not written in stone, they can change. Though the habit of planning, if you don't have it currently, you must start it. Because without a plan, you wake up every day, you have no intentions, you have no clarity, and what happens by the end of the day? Well, that's exactly what you end up with. Random outcomes. And I feel you, I get you. It's not easy. Though, if you don't do this work, how can we actually expect a client to be working with us? So, it doesn't get spoken enough of in the spiritual community, in the health community, alternative health community. But I'm going to be honest with you, it was because I invested in myself to work on myself. It's when I discovered that my reason for not having a plan is because of my, disgust for the fact that I had spent the first 23 years of my life conditioned to think that I only had one way to do life. Then once I broke out of that with great difficulty, I then suddenly realized, wow, this life, I have so many things to unlearn. And from there, everything else unfolded. I had no idea that this is where I'd be 20 years down the track. I'm sure if you look back at your life, you are somewhere you had no idea you would be. Though what I have to say is, I am here especially because I made certain choices, like planned my health, I planned my wealth, I planned my business, I planned my life so that at least what I have today, I can take full responsibility for. I can say this is because of the choices that I've made. So make a plan, and making a plan doesn't mean other people can't plan with you. Making a plan doesn't mean that you cannot change it or develop on it. Making a plan doesn't also mean that it has to be 100% foolproof. When you're making a plan, I want you to ask bigger, higher level questions like, what do I want? Why do I want this? Where do I see myself in 10 years' time? How do I want to be spending my time next week? Okay, or what is my ideal day? So think big and write it down. I may have to create a new podcast on planning. Though, if you're more curious about planning, why don't you check out the link in the description section and go ahead and download the Your Business Assessment. And this is where you can actually see how your business is currently doing, but it'll also help you get started with planning. And that planning will actually help you create different results than what you're doing currently. Cool? So, planning is good. And successful solopreneurs always have a plan to follow. They may not know how they're going to make that plan a reality, though they know what. They know why. They know exactly what they want. They know exactly why they want it and why it's so important for them to get up every day and actually go after that dream. Getting this? Beautiful. Let's go to the final one, which is one of my all-time favorites, but not the easiest. This is when you have these outcomes, when you have a plan, okay? One of the biggest things that are going to actually make things happen is if you take 100% responsibility for your plan and what your statistics are saying about you. Though, struggling solopreneurs, struggling holistic professionals, struggling people, they have a bad habit of not taking 100% responsibility. And I know why, because everybody that gets on this journey and they get told this thing about, well, look at the common denominator, it's you. And you must take 100% responsibility for everything. Well, this is where I kept tripping up on my journey back in the day. There were some horrible things that happened to my life or to me, and I was innocent in those situations, and I couldn't understand how the heck do I take responsibility, 100% responsibility. Why should I take 100% responsibility for the other person too? So I was running from this, thought of taking 100% responsibility for a while, thinking that actually it's unfair. It's unfair. I was feeling that I was not getting fairly treated, and I didn't agree with it. And it's because I didn't understand why. So this is where we need to sort of demystify this statement first for you to see where and how this is taking place. So one of the ways that our egos will trick us into thinking that, no, that's not my responsibility, that's not my doing, somebody else needs to do that, is because it's really good at doing that, number one. And number two is it's constantly in protection mode. So it's got all these biases. So the ego is made up of all the biases, and one such bias is confirmation bias. Whatever your thinking is, you're going to look for evidence according to that. So if you feel like it's not your fault, or if you're not feeling, but if you're thinking that way, if you're thinking, in a defensive way that, look, I'm not going to take responsibility for 100%. And guess what? The brain, the mind starts looking for evidence in the environment to confirm why you wouldn't. Okay? But where does that get us? Does it solve the problem? Where it gets us is probably not solving the actual problems that we get dealt with, And that's not what we want. If we need to change things in our lives, we can always find evidence that, I had chocolates in the fridge. Oh, you know what? I sit down too much during my day. And I felt really bad. I felt really sad. I had someone pass away. These are all evidence that the brain just finds very, very conveniently. And please don't think that I am gaslighting you, because this evidence exists too. It exists as well. Though remember what I said at the beginning of this podcast is that that's how the brain is wired. So it's a very easy thing for it to do, is to go find the evidence for why this is the right thinking. And a successful person has actually challenged that thinking and said, well, what can I find out about this that will help me change the outcome? What don't I know? Okay, this is actually called jnana yoga. Really questioning intellectually how much we don't actually know about ourselves, about the world, right? Coming from a place of curiosity, but looking at the fact that the evidence, the proof is in the pudding. So if we're not liking the statistics, metrics, outcome, consequences, circumstances, and we don't like the outcomes of the no plan event, then we need to be able to take 100% responsibility for our own experience. Okay? So the better thinking, or the way to think about this statement, is not thinking that, if someone does something bad to you, that all of it is your fault. Like a lot of spiritual people have gaslit me in the past because they didn't have clarity of this thing either. They'd say things like, and by the way, they didn't do it like directly, because I don't think they even knew the line of thinking that they were following. But you've heard people say that, karma is cause and effect, and then they leave it at that, and then you're thinking, so I got cheated on because I deserved it, because I did something, right? And so that's something that you want to think about, and you think about, well, that's not the right line of thinking, because the only place that's going to take you is shame or guilt or sadness. Okay? And that's where the mind will go easily anyway. What's a better level thought that can help you take responsibility for your experience? And that is to say, well, I am 100% responsible for my outcomes, for my experience, for my feelings, for my thoughts. Okay? Whatever's inside of you, you are 100% responsible for. Are you feeling this? You're not responsible for anything outside of you but the experience that's taking place inside of you. And that includes your thinking, your feeling, your volitions. That's where shift happens. Until you change your habit, you're going to continuously perpetuate the habit of thinking that you're not capable. Because the underlying belief and thinking of not taking 100% responsibility for yourself, for your experience, is thinking that you're not capable. This is again self-trust. I'm not capable, I must be flawed, and I cannot trust myself, or I'm not, able to. this is again coming from somewhere in the early childhood years, creating a belief, and then it plays itself out. And so we continuously, look at our results and we'll go, well, it's because of this. And if, as long as we're pointing to the outside and saying, well, it's because of this, and that, kids, wife, work, government, taxes, IT, anything that's outside of us, as long as we're doing that, it's the brain finding confirmation that what you're thinking is right. But really, to make a real shift in your habit, the things that cause the result that you want, is firstly feeling a shift inside to go, okay, so right now I'm 10 kilos heavier than I should be. Okay, so I am completely 100% responsible for my health. Cool? Until I'm prepared to take 100% responsibility for my health, I won't be able to shift anything. So try it out. Write that statement out for every bit of results that you want to change today and this week and this year. Put your hands on your heart and you can say, I am taking 100% responsibility for my business results. I'm taking 100% responsibility for my relationship results. I'm taking 100% responsibility for my health results. Okay? And you can be more specific with those words about what is it that you want to change. I'm taking 100% responsibility for where I live. I'm taking 100% responsibility of how much money I make. I'm taking 100% responsibility for the clients that I work with. I'm taking 100% responsibility for the way I spend my time. So you can keep going and going and going, but this is a way of living where these habits, these powerful habits of actually being curious about what your experiences are teaching you, then creating an aligned life, business, health, relationship plan, marketing and sales plans to be able to support yourself on daily, and then taking 100% responsibility for everything that you're creating means that you are set. These are your 3 pillars that are going to take you to the end. Can you imagine anything else that you might want to bring in as a better habit that can replace an existing limiting belief or a bad habit that's maybe keeping you playing small? And playing small is basically resorting to guilt, shame, sadness loops. I want to hear from you what you loved about this episode this week. This one's really like, I went into content that I definitely just talk within private consults, private coaching, and in my training and mentoring. Though these are factors that play a big part in how far you're going to go on your business journey too. What we do in one place is what we do in other places. And my intention today is to help you make what is unconscious more conscious, and also give you a different way of thinking so that you can change those habits. And a habit simply is, once you've made what was unconscious conscious, you've changed it. Now, every time you repeat what's not working, you're going to know consciously that, hey, I just realized that doesn't work. Not having a plan for today, it doesn't work, right? Your brain is going to remind you, and so you must take the next steps. In fact, I urge you to take that inspired action and get in touch with us. You can go on my website, www.supriyar.com, or go to the show notes and click the links there and visit and see how we can be working together. take the responsibility and change the outcomes, because honestly, my dream is you being your most successful self, doing what you love doing. And as a result, you're going to make other people successful in their lives with their health, well-being, and everything else that you do for them. So thank you so much for being here, pressing play, and being a part of our community. Lovely to be here, and I look forward to coming back next week. Have a lovely week ahead.